In this video, we're back to working on Lazy Jake, and what we find in this one, well, a really bad cracked exhaust manifold. And it turns out the manifold's not actually that old or in that bad a shape, other than, of course, the humongous crack in it. Customer opted for a one-piece new manifold, though. Never seen this before. It's a whole kit that comes with it, and we're going to be installing it. And, of course, with any aftermarket install, we always find a little hiccups. Maybe more than a couple little hiccups, but we'll be finding all sorts of stuff about this manifold, what I think about it, what I think about the kit. Got it installed, got it running, and overall, how hard it is to do. Hope you enjoy. Hey guys, Josh with That Channel, and if you ever wondered why Cat makes a three-piece exhaust manifold, why don't they just make a one-piece? Because the three-piece are known for leaking and they're quite expensive. Of course, it's a large manifold, so maybe a one-piece would warp or something, I don't know. But what we got going on here is a BXS with a single turbo, not exactly factory, that's quite cracked, and the customer opted to he found and is buying a one-piece replacement manifold. So I'm going to show you removing this old one as well as installing the new one and what I think about it. So first off, let's look at the crack in the old manifold. So this is the Lazy Jake truck here, and I was doing the belts and cleaning out the intake of the dirt that was in it, and I noticed, hard to miss, but you see the crack there? Holy mackerel, you don't see one like that very often. At least I haven't, and I've worked on quite a few Cat engines. I thought maybe, okay, maybe it's just some residual, it's not that bad, but when you start the engine, it is blowing exhaust out of there. So that's not going to get better. It's also probably going to burn a hole in this rubber intake boot here. So I said, hey, you need a new exhaust manifold, and he went and got a quote for a Cat one, and it was, I think, about $500 for this forward section. But of course, to do that, you have to pull the whole entire exhaust manifold off. So he said, hey, have you ever heard of a one-piece one? I said, I mean, I've never seen one on a Cat, but seems like it might be a good idea. So we're going to pull this one off and go from there. So yeah, this is a BXS, which is a CERT engine, which normally is a compound turbo, which meaning it has two turbos and a pre-cooler and a bunch of coolant hoses blocking this whole setup. So customer bought the truck like this with the single turbo retrofit. And that makes this job a lot easier. Although with it being, as you'll see later, an aftermarket manifold, that might be the reason why it's cracked. The old one, that is. So what we're doing here is obviously just pulling the turbo off. Now this truck, although this is only the second video on the truck, there's going to be 3 videos on the truck. The repairs on this truck were legion. There were more than a dozen small and large repairs that were done on this truck. So you might see throughout this video, while I'm pulling this off here, that there's a few steps like, oh, why doesn't he replace this or do this? There were so many different things we were doing on this truck that if everything I saw ended up getting replaced or fixed and it would take forever. I think it would probably exceed the amount that the customer almost paid for the truck. I think he was getting quite sick of having all the little repairs. And yeah, so you might wonder at the end, oh, why didn't you replace this one little thing or that? It's just because this had to get done. The truck had to get back on the road, as well as try to fix it as best as possible with the parts we had in the kit that was provided with us here. But you'll see that as that goes along. What I'm doing here is just getting the oil line here. It's actually run under the wastegate hose there, which is actually hooked up, surprisingly. One thing I didn't like too much is there's the oil return line, and I'll do a close-up there, just kind of covering up all this stuff. I had just finished cleaning all these intake ports out, so I didn't want to get any dirt or anything else in them. You can really see the crack now. Pretty bad. Looks like it's several inches long. This tube, looks like it's painted red, like this is off a Cummins or something. I don't know about this hose. The hose fits very loosely on here. Like, look at that. That's not the right size hose. It's not under pressure, but still. We're working on getting our bolts out, get the turbo off, and then get the manifold off. So now you can really see it. pretty bad. So what we're gonna do is, to get it on with the studs or off with the studs, you have to pull the thermostat housing, which of course means you have to drain the cooling system. But we're not gonna do that. So what we're gonna try to do is take the nuts off and the studs. If you take those off, you can then kind of slide it out without too much problem. Using some penetrating oil on the nuts. Find that penetrating oil on bolts doesn't really do much, but on nuts it does. Okay. That's it. Go look at this turbo. So this is the turbo. It's a Borg Warner. Looks pretty new. You can see this is definitely a used hose off of something else with the red paint on there like that. I don't know. The flange here is in really good shape, so I think this turbo is probably replaced when they did the rebuild like that. And yeah, let's try to get this manifold off. So we're going to get the manifold off here. You can see the turbo is off. All that stuff is off already. And yeah, we're going to be able to successfully remove it without pulling the thermostat housing. Now, it does create a problem with the forward exhaust manifold seal because you can't fully pull it out. The kit, you're going to see that comes with new seals, but they're just like a little flat seal. It's not the style that Cat uses where it actually has two seals that sandwich together. So I'm not sure. It doesn't have any instructions other than some torque specs. You can see these were super dry. All of the studs came out with the nuts. I don't think they used any sort of anti-seize or anything on these, but the kit does not have any instructions as far as if you're supposed to use their gaskets on top of the old Cat ones, or if you're supposed to remove the Cat tube style gaskets and just use the flat style that the kit gives you. So it's kind of, I wish they would specify there. The Cat ones are machined that way for a reason, though, and you'll see what I'm talking about later when I pull the Cat gaskets out. And I've seen a lot of kits where they don't use those, it would seem, which seems weird that it would be machined for a Cat one, but not use one. So, yep, got it off. You know, looking at these ceiling flanges, they're not that old. Yeah, definitely cracked there. I do not believe this is a Cat manifold at all. It doesn't say Cat anywhere. It just says NA, which is kind of funny. Assuming that's not applicable. North America. Naturally aspirated. No idea. But this is not, I can tell you, these are not the original. This is not the original manifold. I was wondering if it might have been. But look at this ceiling flange. You still see the fly cut marks. There's no wear on it as far. You'll get a lot of pitting on this face here. A lot. But these all look to be in good condition. So I'm going to say that this is just an aftermarket manifold that has failed very early in its life, which is unfortunate, but you know, this might be a very cheap manifold. I'm not sure. Pretty sure it's not Cat, but glad it came off. So here it is, folks. This is a Power Play Products product, and it's quite a kit. Now, they do give you these gaskets, so to tell you the truth, folks, I don't know what the heck they're for, because these are Cat manifold gaskets. And they're kind of stacked, so you have one seal, this tube, and then another seal. They only give you 6 of these guys, so I'm not exactly sure what I'm supposed to do with that. So as you can see, it's a one piece, so pretty beefy. It looks like the tube diameter is larger, the inside tube diameter. It's about as heavy as a Cat manifold, I'd say, maybe a little lighter. ppm. Looks pretty good. I like it. It looks like it was definitely two separate pieces and they welded it together. You can see the seam here. You see that there, and then they milled it. I feel that a little bit. Hope that's not a leak point. welded it here. Looks pretty good to me. The ceiling faces look pretty good. Must be a support there, some sort. I don't know. Now they do give you new spacers, which is actually pretty cool. Nuts. Not sure what the washers are for. I guess the nuts, usually you don't use those, but and then you get exhaust manifold flange seal. Oh, give you the 40 foot-pounds. Recommend rechecking after 2 heat cycles. That's not the worst idea. So Cat's recommendation on 10mm bolts is 40 foot-pounds, not 50, but of course that's theirs. Also, the standard torque from Cat on these is weird. It's usually 28 for the nuts, which doesn't make sense for a 3/8 fastener. I usually go to 35 because that's standard torque from Cat, but we'll be doing 40, I guess. That's their call. I wish they told you the spec for the sequence because it's a little weird from Cat. Yeah. The only thing they didn't give me, which I wish they would have, but I guess it can vary from manifold to manifold, is these studs. So notice the studs are tapered. Tapered side, not tapered side. On Cat ones, the taper side goes in, and usually there's a marking here, but we're going to be putting some anti-seize on these guys. Just, you don't need to coat the whole thing, it just needs to be, it's pretty cool anti-seize, huh? It's the Wellworth Excel. Anywho, they put a little bit just on the threads here, slide them in, then I put a little bit on the threads where the nuts are going to sit, and hard to do it while holding the camera, but anyway, get that on, then we'll slide the manifold on. I'm only going to put a couple studs on this side, because I have to slide it in this way and then, you know, fidget it over. So let's get these on, a couple of them on, and we'll slide this on, we're good to go. So finally getting it reassembled here, and luckily, yeah, there's no real assembly of this manifold. I always hate building the Cat manifolds because I've had them, even with new manifolds, new seals, all that stuff, not only are they super expensive, I've had them leak between the forward and center sections and rear center sections, and many times, many times, and it's very difficult to replace properly here. So, not saying, I don't know if this is going to last a really long time. Hopefully this manifold lasts a really long time. Customer did opt for the new Cat gaskets there. Like I said, the only one that I couldn't replace was number 1. So what I ended up doing was taking the forward part of the Cat one off and then putting one of the ones that came in the kit on to replace that. It has a metal seal ring in it, just like the Cat ones. The rear one that goes against the head doesn't actually have that. It's just like a fiber one. But it looks like we're almost done here, and I wish that were the case, but how about a little destruction of the week? This week's destruction of the week, first one comes from Michael. Actually, the only one comes from Michael, and it's a 3208, and he said, "Does this sound bad to you?" Yes, it does, and he's currently working on pulling the pan to try to find out what the heck's going on there. Hopefully, it's something he can fix. Next thing's really just something I found. I was out cutting firewood in my property, and I saw this blue thing. It is a blue-tailed skink. Never seen that before. It's a real little guy, 3 inches long, something like that. Super interesting. Thought you might find it interesting. Let's get back to our video here. So, what are we doing now? Well, manifold's on, and we're just trying to get the spacers on. As you can see, our first little hiccup. Not really a hiccup. This is not specific to this manifold. But yeah, not all of the spacers are always easy to slide on. It's also the same way with the forward ones because you can't slide the studs on and then put the spacers on if the thermostat housing is in the way. So notice in our first little deal here, seems okay there, the rivet that holds the seal together is kind of hitting manifold here, so I don't know if that's going to create a problem or not, but I guess we'll find out. They're brass, so hopefully they'll just squish down. I'll take a look here just to make sure. So I've got a video on this specifically, but you might be wondering, what's the best way to install the studs? Some guys put 2 nuts on them and tighten them. I use these kits. These are technically Cornwell, but the manufacturer is a company called Ossenmacher. I don't know what else they manufacture, but these are pretty cool. I've used these on a lot, and they are specific to the size of the stud. And they are a remover installer. Basically, there's 3 little cams in there, and you can tighten and loosen. Now, the stud does not get torqued to the same amount that the nut does. The stud gets tightened to about 18 foot-pounds. To tell you the truth, folks, I don't necessarily torque the studs anymore. I just hand tighten them to snug so that they're fully seated. The stud is what pulls the nut is what puts the tension on the stud when it is torqued. So what we're doing here is we're just seating the studs into the head, and then you'll put your spacers, and then you will put the nut on top of that. So yeah, pretty cool kit. If you don't have them and do a lot of exhaust stuff and stud stuff, I would recommend picking up a set of the metric and standard ones. Alright, so there's not a lot of threads that stick out. So what we're going to try and do is see. The flange I checked is the same thickness. Spacer and stud length are the same as the old ones. So I think as I torque it down, we'll have enough. You don't need a lot of studs sticking out of the nut. You really just need it flush. But I've sometimes seen, if it's an aftermarket head, they're fully tapped and your stud lengths are a little short. Worst case scenario, we'll have to grind these down, the spacers, but I try not to do that. I think we'll be okay though. Alright, so we have a minor major problem here. So the studs are becoming a problem. The reason is I can bottom this out with a wrench. Watch. But it won't fully seat like the... Okay, so it's tight now. It's not torque tight, but everything's tight. As you can see, we're only about halfway through the nut. So maybe 2 full threads. This is the Cat one. So I took one of the old Cat studs off. Cat says the studs are reusable from them. These don't look super old, but as you can see, this one is fine. I would much rather have that than that, as you can see. So we're left with a dilemma here. Do we take the Cat studs off the nuts, which are right here, reuse the studs? We basically can't use these ones at this point. We might be saying, are they shorter? Well, not really. They're about the same length. See? However, you see the deep taper here versus this? So what's happening is on the Cat ones, the threaded end, you can kind of see it's rolled over. It digs into the threads and it stops. So these stop in the head sooner, which gives you more threads sticking out. These do not though, because they gave them such a deep taper. So basically we have a couple options here. We can run it half threaded. I don't consider that a good option. We can install the old Cat studs, which I actually think might be our best solution here. Like I said, the studs are reusable, the nuts are not, according to Cat. And I don't believe these are very old. I mean, they are rusted, but that's not really saying anything. They're not bent or anything. The nuts are a little tight, but whatever. Or option 3 would be we'd have to actually, well, get longer studs or mill these down, which could be difficult. These are quite a lot of steel to take out, and we'd have to mill 12 of them down with like a hand grinder or something, which the problem with that is if you don't get it perfectly flat, that's going to cause your stud, or not your stud, your nut to be seated slightly offset. which is also a problem. So, So after talking it over with the customer, we decided to use the cat studs, the new nuts, and the new spacers. That'll give us the right length with the studs installed. As well as, I'm not sure what's stronger, a mystery stud or a used cat stud, tell you the truth there. If you look in your top right, you can see that the alternator bracket, well, the radiator support bracket, with going to the top left alternator bolt is snapped off there. He had one of the other various things I had to fix there. I welded that back together with not the prettiest weld. But anyway, what we're doing here is just torquing this. Now the procedure I used was I worked inside out, kind of like you would torque ahead. If you go by a cat procedure with the newer cat manifolds, it has you kind of do a zigzag pattern where you start upper number 3, then you go lower number 4, upper number 5, lower number 6, and then it kind of zigzags like it's trying to avoid some sort of submarine or something. But anyway, I just went inside out. And yeah, if you had pulled the cat seals out, the exhaust manifold seals, and just used those flat seals, that would have also made the studs, wouldn't have made them longer, but it would give them you more thread because the seals are much thinner. So not really sure what the greatest course of action there, but that's what we ended up doing. All right, so we got them on there. Man, that stud thing really took a long time to get figured out, but on now. You can see they extend just slightly past, so look pretty good. Very uniform depth and length on the studs and nuts, so that's good. Pretty happy with it there. So one of my main concerns was the rivet here. You can see the rivet sits under the flange, but I checked all of them with a 2000s feeler gauge, and it's definitely got a pretty good crush on there. These seem like they miss most of the rivets, although it's very close. That one's hitting it. But they must be brass because they crush. They just, you can tell that they're squished. That one's definitely distorted and out of the way, but there's no getting a feeler gauge under the seal, so it's not like it's inhibiting it from sealing. It's definitely working. So let's get on to the next step here. So customer did want me to check this also. He said it was leaking oil, which that's pretty loose there. It's a little worrying, but he thinks that might have a bad O-ring. I'm gonna pull this off and see what we got going on there. So this is like a swivel fitting. Get some debris in there. I don't know what that is. Not good. Let's take this puppy out. See what's going on. Maybe it just has a bad O-ring or something. Some people have, no. Oh, it's a cat O-ring. Wow, that's surprising. It wasn't the tightest. Pretty sure I have a lot of people don't know how to install these properly. I'm not saying the person that did this did not install properly, but you need to keep the O-ring. If you look, there's a section that doesn't have threads. That O-ring has to retain that section there. So what it has to do is you'll use this top lock collar that threads and thread it in, you know, install it like so. And I like to get it, I think it was sitting about here. So what you want is past the threads. There you can see we're in that flat spot where there's no threads. So we're gonna go here, okay? Then you're gonna tighten this lock nut down and it's gonna push that O-ring into place and retain it. I've seen guys thread these all the way in and then you're pushing up into the threads for the lock collar, and I've seen them be installed too high and then you're pushing the O-ring into the threads. So you really just want it in that sweet spot. You've got about 2 or 3 full turns of area there to play with. But yeah, it looks like it has a cat ring. We'll put another one on there. I'm pretty sure I have one that size. And put it back on for the customer. So folks, that's it. Let's ignore my hideous welding here. I got a new stick welder, but he wanted a temp probe installed. It'll work. So yeah, the exhaust manifold here. Had to use some bolts because they don't give you the studs for those, and I couldn't get them. But those were the exhaust bolts already that were off this turbo. Should be good. Yeah, went on pretty easy. I would say the stud situation was a big pain in the butt. I've got a few other repairs to do on this truck, one of which is trying to fix this. Got to finish installing the probe and something with the clutch brake. But that's pretty much it. Everything's tight up here. Interesting. Hopefully it lasts a long time. Guess we'll have to wait on the customer to hear back from that. Just making sure I don't feel any big exhaust leaks or no oil leaks there. Yeah, everything turned out pretty good. Not sure longevity on this manifold, really. It could last 1,000,000 miles, who knows? It's really up to the customer. He'll let me know, hopefully, if everything goes good. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching.